Hello and welcome back to Driveway. It has been an interesting moment. So, today is pretty much December 8th. I'm pretty much 41 as of yesterday, but I've been doing a bunch of stuff in the last couple months that I haven't really been keeping everyone updated about. So, I had this brilliant idea that I was going to do a project that may or may not be behind me here and take it, quickly finish it off, and then post videos straight on through of the whole build, so that way there's not a long wait to see the results of a multi-week long project. Downside: this turned into a much bigger project than I initially wanted it to, and the reason it was kind of much bigger was it's being built out here, of course, in my driveway, and there had been a series of weird things that has slowed everything down, including weather, kind of like what it is right now. Biggest one is light issue, and second biggest one is we had some construction in the backyard here from the local hospital that's putting in a big old parking lot. But anyways, I also picked up a different microphone, so periodically through these next videos you may hear different microphone sounds and that type of stuff, but hopefully we'll be getting a kind of a little better experience for everyone. This microphone kind of actually picks up a little more bass sound, so I kind of will probably sound a little more like I actually do versus just a electronic phone sound. But anyways, let's go and kind of just talk about the biggest issue that is slowing me down, and that would be the daylight problem. So as we roll into the fall here, we all know that the days get shorter, then you have daylight savings time going away, and that makes it so I've got time between 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock to somehow get home from work that I leave at 5 o'clock to get something done on this project. So that pretty much means I got a couple hours here and there, and then time on the weekend. And then sometimes you get negative degrees and you're hosed again. But around here, it kind of just seems like you work on everything in the daylight, and then before you know it, it's dark. Anyways, hopefully in these next videos you'll kind of appreciate or enjoy the kind of disaster I'm creating behind me, but from someone that sees the future from past me, this thing's look pretty good. Anyways, let's get to the videos, and hopefully you'll enjoy it and want to come back and see some of this other junk that we mess around with. The shop. Today I'm gonna try to get some of these suspension bars going for the future trailer. Axles have yet to say that they're shipped, so I guess more waiting on our end, but shouldn't wait too long since I already got these mocked up in the computer. I've kind of got an idea how they're going to go together, so we'll get them knocked out, and then we'll just be able to move from there. So, I guess, let's just start off with what we're doing here. Essentially, we're making ourselves a air ride trailer. So that way I'll be able to lower the trailer and raise the trailer based on different needs that I might have. So If you've ever driven or taken a decent car trailer out for a ride behind a vehicle, especially the ones that have the 2-foot dovetail, if you've ever left a relatively steep outdrive, the back of that thing always drags. Sometimes you can run into that with some sketchy gas stations out in the middle of nowhere that you just had to stop at because things happen. So I want to have a completely flat bed so that way there's not that dovetail that's sticking out catching everything. But then I need the loading height of something probably even lower than what a dovetail will give you. So with this setup, I should have about 7 inches of movement, and when attached to a tow vehicle or a set of jacks, because I think I'm gonna make a manual jack setup that will lift it higher than what you'd expect a normal trailer jack to hold. But anyways, when you then drop the suspension and it's attached to a fixed point in the front, your whole back end is gonna drop. So that should make almost like a tilt trailer without it actually being a tilt trailer. Because I've kind of looked at some of the quick tilt trailers and I didn't like that they're made super light duty. So they had the 3,500 pound axles, and then it just literally like tried to bend the trailer in half to make it tilt. That didn't seem all that nice. It'd be great for something like just towing the Crossfire or the future prototype racer. But if we wanted to move something like this big old Ford, I don't think I would trust that lifting system to hold up this pig. So that's what kind of led me down to what I'm making, because you can't find something like this without requesting it be custom built and blowing like 20 grand easily. So I've kind of looked around at some people's designs. There was one guy that was selling a air ride trailer for like $15,000, but they had airbags on the outside of it, and it looked like a major pinching hazard when there was raising and lowering. So I did not like that design. And again, that was built with 3,500 pound axles, which is perfectly fine for things like the Crossfire. But once again, roll up one of these 5,000 pound piglets here and you've got yourself a problem. Let alone if you had something like my old plow truck. That thing was past 7,000. So you really didn't want to put a 7,000 pound diesel pickup truck onto something that only had 7,000 pound gross axle capabilities. So essentially, we're going to try to make it as cheaply as possible, but by overkilling it a little bit in the process. So once I get the axles in and I get the steel ordered, we'll show you exactly how we're going to do that. But we're just going to start off with these suspension arms. Alright, so the type of suspension I'm going to rig up on this thing is going to be more of a radius arm style. And I use the term radius arm to denote a single arm that's anchored in one spot. So as it cycles through its movement, and essentially it draws a radius. This is similar to what you'll find on the front of like this old Ford here, or like what I put on the Raider. And this is actually probably going to be closer to a trailing arm design, because
the direction of travel, say if we're going this direction with the trailer, it's going to have the pivot point up here. So if you hit anything along the way, it'll just bump it in line with the arm. Whereas if you hit something harsh while like braking or something, and you got kind of more of this front style, it'll try to extend it. And we don't want that. So, trailing arm, radius arm, everyone's going to have a different take on what they're classified as. I always just thought of the radius arm as something, like I showed, that just draws that radius. So how about like a quick illustration here. The radius arm setup, say your, let's go maybe at ride height. You'll have this as your fixed point, then you'll have your axle down here. And you'll get your spring coming off there. So as you rotate up to make it, let's say, parallel, this arm here will seemingly get longer because it's no longer at that same angle, which pushes everything back. But then at the same time, it's going to rotate this suspension pad. So like we got a suspension pad here. It's like if you have it perfectly flat here and then you cycle it up, it's gonna tilt up a little bit. So for some things, you need to be aware of that, because if you get your arm way too short, this change in angle will be greater, and then you'll run into some weird radiusing problem. And that's where people started making kind of more of like the 4-link style. So say you got like a parallel 4-link that then attaches to another bracket here, and your axle attaches to that bracket. So then when this parallel bar rotates up and down, these bars get longer and shorter at the same distance, so then this whole bracket will stay essentially parallel to this mount. So essentially, if you've been in automotive stuff, you'll kind of have the idea of the difference between the radius and a linked bar. But anyways, I went with this radius arm style mainly because the spring that I'm using, after kind of messing around with it, it's better off to have the rotation like the radius arm, where it gets its kind of extra inches just from bending the spring. So this here, now we've pushed it forward probably about ½ an inch, and all that's really done is compressed one side. If this was an actual like 4-link style, it would have to stay parallel, so one would move the base forward or back instead of bending to get that movement. So if I had something more of like the coilover design, this is a much better operation. But if you went spring bucket, spring style, you're more this trailing arm, radius arm style. Anyways, let's take a look at the suspension arm. So what I have here is a 4-foot section of 1/4 inch 2x2 square tube. This is the same material that I used to make the long arm radius arms on the Raider. So far I haven't bent them on that truck beating on it, so I figure that's a good place to start. Alright, so our link bar is going to consist of kind of a knockoff Johnny joint. If for some reason this doesn't work for what it's tasked with, it's compatible with the real Johnny joint when those actually start coming in stock again, because they're having some stock issues at the time I was ordering everything. And then on the axle section, we're going to have 2 bushings. These are going to be non-rotating, and it's just going to hold on to this bracket that then has the axle in there. So this will be mounted onto the arm, that guy up there, so then that whole conglomeration will rotate. And then our biggest bend point will then be right here at this bushing, because it's going to have to translate all that into a torque movement right there. So on the upside, that will allow us to check if we're causing any bending. If we are, we can unbend and weld some more steel plate on there. But as I think of it right now, I don't think it should have a problem. But we can always bracket, gusset, many different places. So anyways, our little bushings, we're just going to run the hole saw into the end, like you saw on that link I'm currently working on. And then one more a little bit further up, and it'll be good to go. So I'm going to finish cutting these holes. Then I'll have to grab the grinder. We'll just open it up a little bit, smooth things out, make sure we have a good source there. Then we'll weld in this first set of bushings first. That way, once we have that bushing in, we can figure out how everything else is going to line up, so we don't have a bolt not fitting into the correct hole. Alright, so after we got the holes cut, we can just chop off the top little section. Make sure we have it on the correct side. There's that. And then we're going to chop off just the little last section here. Since I cut everything on a weird angle, because it was 24 foot long and I didn't have support on the backside, all the cuts ended up being a little crooked, so we're just squaring up a little bit. And there we go. Now I'll just have to hit it with the angle grinder. Gonna clean up the holes a little bit, and we'll be pretty much set. Now if you're gonna manufacture this stuff, it'd be great to just get this on the multi-axis plasma cutter. So that way it could just rotate it, slice it, rotate, slice, done. And it would fit those bushing shells perfectly. But we don't have that type of luxury, so we need a little more manual messing around with it. I'll throw this in the stack and I'll get to grinding. Alright, so it's welding time. We got that section of bearing half kind chucked up in here. I'm using the bracket as a way to bolt and hold so it remains parallel. Since this is a 2-inch half and this is 2-inch, you can just sandwich them together and they should end up essentially parallel. So, all that we're going to do, light it up, hit a good tack across here, flip it over, burn it down here, and then I can take off this bracket and finish the rest of the welding. So, I'm just going to hack this out for this one and probably tackle the other couple while we're at it. Alright, well I am no welding expert, but I think I'm kind of getting the hang of this TIG. It is kind of nice not to splatter everywhere. So I'll just take this thing out to the grinder, kind of clean up the edges, make sure they're parallel and flat. And then we can move on to the next set of bushings. Alright, so since every stage gets everything hot, it makes it a pain to look at the next stage. I figured we can just skip forward to showing off the prototype arm. This was essentially what I started off with to make sure that the other three turn out. So this will definitely be one of the 4, but as you can see, we've got the 2 bushing points, got a bracket on there, that's all bolted there, and then down here we got the link arm piece. So this will all mount up right on the axle, so it doesn't really matter what orientation we have this thing at. Probably be something along the lines of maybe that. Yeah, it'll probably be about that. So this will be the furthest it'll extend. Axle will be attached into there. Then you can cycle it up and down. So that should work pretty good. There'll be a couple caveats using this with the drop axle that I'm planning on using, but we'll talk about that more when I'm actually hooking that together. For now, this is the arm, and I'll just have to finish off making those other 3 off camera and probably shoot it with a little rattle can primer just to keep it relatively rust free. So I'll get working on the other ones, and hopefully by the time we get to the next video we'll have some axles and stuff to look at. Anyways, thanks for stopping by and watching. Hopefully we'll see you again later.